Okay. Good. No, not good. There we go. All right. All right. Well, welcome to the, yeah, you have, but not everybody has. Welcome to the Central Ohio Information Security Summit. This is Electronic Safe Fail. I've done this talk a few other times. Please feel free to make this interactive. Throw something at me. Just blurt out a comment. I'm happy to talk about the subject. Let's get started. My name is Jeff Popio. I'm an information security architect for hire. I work for a wonderful company called Stealth Entry. I'm a husband, father, and member of Blocksport International, although I'm told that doesn't mean anything anymore because it's pretty much going away. So I may be a member of Tool or Fools shortly, but in the meantime, Columbus is kind of reorganizing. What I am not a professional safecracker. I am an InfoSec guy who is interested in Locksport, and I own a bunch of crappy safes. So, what are we going to talk about? Non-destructive entry, covert entry, if you will, of electronic safes. Mainly the cheaper category. Not your $20,000 bank vault. We're talking about the most popular safes, the most common kinds of safes you're going to find in the world. The ones that, a boss or a colleague might use to secure things in their office because, that'll keep it safe. Those papers or your backup tapes or your certificate authority, whatever, just stick it in that safe. It'll be safe. So why are we doing this? We're doing this because these things are everywhere. There's literally hundreds and thousands of these in businesses, offices, and homes all over the world, and they're relied on way too much. I'll just read you one of these. It's great. These are all Amazon reviews. This is a great Christmas gift for my daughter and son-in-law who don't like to use banks to save their money. Like, way too much trust placed in these things. $180 safe, not equal to safe deposit box. So we're here. How did I get into this? What happened? Well, I bought some crappy safes and I had a client. That client bought this safe. And they were like, well, we're going to keep all this important stuff. Well, I'm like, where are you going to keep all this important stuff? We're having this discussion about, I'll just tell you, it's about certificate authority. I'm like, where are we going to put these, the offline root? Like, we don't really have any secured storage or anything available. So what are we going to do? I'm like, well, we've got this closet and we'll put this safe in it and it'll be secure. I'm like, well, what safe are you getting? And they're like, well, we got this. And I'm like, oh, I don't know if that's a good place for, something as important as the keys to the kingdom. And they're like, well, it's in this locked room in our building, which admittedly a building security was not the best. So, hey, I was like, can I try to get into it? Do you mind? I have something like this. I think I can get into it. And they're like, oh, go for it. But, it's not going to work because we don't even have batteries in it. The key's locked in my office. You're not going to get in. So this happened. Come on, video. Oh, man. There we go. Yeah, so that was going to be the keys to the kingdom, because that building security was going to keep people out. So this was going to keep them really out because they're behind a locked door with, where nobody can observe them. All right, so why does this work? All right, it works, well, obviously because the electronic lock is very lacking and weak. But most importantly, the safe is not bolted down. Number one flaw, people install safes, put them in a closet, put them in a corner, and don't bolt them down. And that leaves them susceptible to this attack specifically, bumping. So why does this work? Well, let's see if you can see my pointer. There we go. So it works because the locking mechanism in the vast majority of these inexpensive electronic safes is a solenoid, where there's a driver pin. The driver pin basically keeps your lever from actuating. And basically the way this lock works is you enter in your key code, it powers this, you enter the correct key code, it powers the solenoid, pulls this little pin down, and then you can actuate the handle, and you can see that here. So this is the inside of the safe, and we're typing in the key code. This little pin drops down, and then you can actuate the handle. That's pretty much how most of these safes work. Well, there's this huge flaw with this mechanism, because if you're familiar with solenoid, it's essentially electromagnet and spring. Well, what do springs do? Well, they can move up and down freely, like this one. So if you can get access to that pin, or drop, or apply any kind of inertia or anything to that pin, you can actuate the handle. So that allows us to do a bumping or dropping attack. Dropping the safe with a well-timed turn of the handle will catch that pin at the bottom and allow you to actuate the handle. This works on almost every electronic safe in the sub $1,000 category. So again, not bolted down, very insecure. I'm interested, does anybody have any of these safes or anything like this? Like maybe a pistol box or something like that? Yeah, I mean, they're pretty common, and it's, like what you'll get into is there's a lot more problems. So what else is wrong? So we bolted it down, right? We're good. It's safe. Well, there's other problems. There's openings. Openings that allow us access to that locking pin. Vendors have to put things in like cables to the keypad, to batteries, other things which allow us access inside the opening door of the safe. So if we can somehow use those holes to get access at the pin, we can open the safe as well by basically manually pressing that pin down. So obviously they were like upset that I opened the safe. So it was like, well, hey, there's no batteries, no keys. Like, it's bolted down now, so you obviously can't get in. And I'm like, well, let me try. And of course, I take a hanging file folder and bend it up into a U shape, and oh look, there's a nice inch-size hole next to the where the battery cable comes through. And I bend up that little folder and reach around and go looking for that pin. And this is just about real time from the time I first tried. And then it opens. So again, these attacks are not sophisticated. They are not like beautiful, but again, a lot of people rely on these. So we've got to take certain precautions or buy better safes. So here we go. We have access to the locking pin. As you can see, we have holes here. This particular hole is what I was exploiting, allowing me to bend the file folder around and hanging file folder and then depress that solenoid. It's interesting, but again, I don't know why you need a 1-inch hole to run 3, 22 gauge wires through, but hey, whatever. So how I got started in this whole business, this whole let's mess with electronic locks game, was I bought a safe. I was about to have my daughter 5 years ago, and I was like, I have some firearms, and I didn't want her to. I wanted to be able to keep her out of those firearms until I could train her properly to know what to do when she gets into them. So I was like, I need a safe. I need something to lock this stuff up. Plus, you got things you want to keep safe when you're out of the house. And an alarm, let's get down to it, doesn't bridge that gap. Your alarm response time, right? So we'll get into that later. But I bought this safe, and immediately, as a security engineer, I take it home, I put it down in the basement, and I'm like, well, how does this thing work? So I take I take the back of the door off, and I find this flaw. And I'm like, there's a screw hole in this keypad for the mounting bracket that goes all the way through the front of the safe. All the rest of them are behind this, 1/2-inch reinforced steel plate that's going to prevent you from drilling into the safe. But this one hole went through this, 1/4-inch front of the safe, and then it was just there. So I bent up a coat hanger and opened the safe, and I was like, wow, that is really bad. So I contacted the vendor. I'm like, hey, it's a Century safe, and I'm concentrating with them, and I'm like, hey, like, this is really bad. Like, what are we gonna? I mean, like, you just order something like this. I don't know, it's like $600-800, something like that, and it's shipped to your door free, Amazon. But don't worry, it's not free shipping on the way back. So I got to ship this. I got to ship this, whatever, 250-pound thing back to Amazon. Like, I don't want to do that. So we have this, I have this dialogue back and forth with SentrySafe, and basically eventually get through customer support and to an engineer, and we say, hey, like, this is bad. What are you going to do about it? And he's like, oh, I totally understand the problem. We're going to get a fix out to you. It's going to make it all better. So what happens? Well, this is what happens on the inside. Not important. They send me this. And I'm like, wow, okay. All right, I don't know how that's going to fix this problem of this solenoid just bouncing up and down and, like, easily accessed. So here they go. I put this fix on. I'm like, whoa, okay, all right. So I guess it covers up the hole of the pin for where I access the pin, but wow, I mean, like, there's like these other holes like down here and up here, and like, that doesn't fix it. So, I kind of realized that they're not really gonna solve this problem. Again, I appreciate the fact that they even responded and tried to fix it. They drew up a technical diagram and everything for how to install 2 screws and a plate. But, hey, it was, I appreciate their effort, but obviously it's not something where they're in the interest of fixing. So I made my own fix, and this is kind of what, if someone's going to try and covertly enter your safe, they're expecting it to be in factory default condition, right? Like if you have done something to obfuscate or obstruct their manipulation of that safe, you're going to make their job much, much more difficult. So where a safe like that might have taken someone who knew what they were doing a minute, say, to get into it, putting something like this, covering the pin and bolting the safe down properly, might make that, I'm not saying that is the foolproof fix. It's a, let's say a 1/4 inch thick steel safe. You can cut through it. You can bang on it enough with a 5-pound sledge. Anything will succumb eventually. But it will buy you the time that you expect, or at least what I believe you should expect a safe to do. So here's my little fix installed. A little bent up, I think it was a stainless steel sink. I just folded up and put some stuff on. I was like, yeah, like my quality craftsmanship there. So there's lots of other problems. Electronic safes also have, a lot of folks, what they do is they use a mechanism to allow you to validate that the user is who they say they are, right? So that mechanism in a lot of cases is a button. This little red button. If you have an electronic safe, you probably have this red button. For some reason, it's the cheapest red button in the world, and it's used everywhere. But what this button does is you basically enter your code to the safe, open the safe, and then in order to set your own code, you press the button. And then you can enter your own 4 or 6, whatever digit code to access the safe. Well, a lot of times they put these in really bad places, like the jamb of the door. So this gives you the ability to take a thin piece of metal, shim of some kind, wedge it through the corner of the door, actuate the button, the safe will beep, enter your key code, and you have your own key code to the safe at that point. So these are everywhere, all kinds of safes. I have my own little library of safes that I bring to our Locksport meetings about every quarter, and I actually have one here if we want to play. But it's pretty. This red button is so common; it's everywhere. They love the red button. So this would be an example. So here we're going to take this is a windshield wiper blade. I just removed the spring steel from it, and we just go under here in the corner and find that little button. Takes a minute. Oh, well, beep. There we go. Oh, I'll set it to 3333. Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. How do I get this out? Oh, it doesn't matter anymore. That's right. I'll just open it. Hey, look. Yeah. So another problem these have is a lot of cases they'll have a bypass lock. So in case the batteries run out or there's a malfunction with the locking mechanism, because how could a locking mechanism of this quality have a malfunction? They put a bypass on the of the locking mechanism with like a key override. And in most cases, on a lot of the more inexpensive locks, and even some of the more expensive safes, they've used essentially what is a cheap wafer lock. And if you're familiar with Locksport, wafer lock is, I'm sure if you're not familiar even with Locksport, you maybe have tried to pick your filing cabinet at your office just like by jamming something in there and wiggling it. That's a wafer lock. So a lot of these bypass keys are essentially these cheap wafer locks. So even if you have done a lot of right things correctly, anybody who is familiar with Locksport, which there are literally thousands of us, or for that matter, any criminal, can use the bypass key to, or pick the bypass lock to do it. So here's an example, like here's another one of my cheap, crappy safes. It works. And what they've done is put a override key in the handle, so we just pull off this little cap here. And then if you're familiar with, if you've ever picked a wafer lock, it's kind of funny, you put a tensioner, this thing here we put on, it's a tensioner. If you ever watch a movie and they stick one thing in a lock and it opens, that's called a key. It takes two things. Tensioner, and then you basically put a piece of metal in there. In this case, it's a rake, and oh look, it just opens right up. And that is really sad and so true for so many of these electronic safes. So there are other flaws, even more. Like if that wasn't enough, in a lot of cases, vendors will print the serial number on the outside of the safe, somewhere on a sticker, what have you. This is a problem, mainly because the manufacturer they don't have any way to authenticate who you are. So if you lose the key, or you lose your code, or what have you, or you buy one of these on eBay and it's locked and you don't know how to get into it, you can contact the manufacturer and they're like, hey, that's no problem. We'll get you a replacement code or a key. Okay, all we need is for you to give us the serial number. And then in most cases, what we want is you to go get a notary to basically say you are the owner of this safe. That's a great authentication mechanism. So basically, if you have access to the serial number, which most of these people print on the outside of these safes, you can contact, for a fee, obviously of like 10 or 15 bucks, you can contact the vendor and most likely get them to send you an override, either override key or a factory code that they've entered into the lock. So we own these safes, since there's millions of these out there. What do we do, right? So obviously you can contact your vendor. It may or may not be helpful. But the most part is like, if you really want to make one of these secure, you're going to have to make some modifications yourself. We're going to defend against openings. We're going to defend against dropping or bumping by bolting it down, right? And we're going to move or relocate that reset button or remove it altogether. Is always a good option. And remember, bolt down your safe. And most importantly, remove the serial number from the outside. Very simple. It's a sticker in most cases. So I did this talk last year, and I wanted to see what improvements have been made. So I bought another Sentry safe, and it was a fire safe, and it was like, wow, they made some real improvements to this to over that existing design. They made the locking pin a spool shape. So now when it's a cylinder shape, what you can do is you can tension the safe, drop it, and it'll hold it down, drop it, hold it down, drop it, hold it down, until eventually you can open it. But by making it a spool shape like that, it can only be activated when it's dropped fully, basically. So making the timing attack much more difficult. And they've changed the orientation of the pin. So now the pin actually pulls towards the front of the safe, meaning that if you were going to try a drop attack, you would obviously have to not be bolted down, and you have to drop it maybe on the front of the safe where the keypad and the handle and all that stuff are. So it's fixed, right? Like, man, that's awesome. So it's good, right? So this is the safe, and people trust it way too much. There's thousands of these, so it's like one of the number one selling on Amazon. And we bypassed it with a book and an N50 neodymium magnet. So look, it works. Right? The book, if you're wondering, is not a Bible. It is the Merrick Veterinary Manual. and we place the neodymium magnet right where that that little solenoid is. And one of the things you have to have in a solenoid is a ferromagnetic pin. And well, look. So the ferromagnetic pin allows us to put a very strong magnet on the front of the safe, and then when we drop it, since the timing attack would be very difficult, using the magnet holds that pin in the down position, so then we can just set it up and open the safe. Hey, look, let's bump some safes. Pistol safe, because your kids, you don't want them to getting into firearms. Oh, that's not good. All right, next. I don't know, maybe get one of these in your apartment. A lot of people like to put these to keep like their wallet and stuff on the dresser. Like, oh, okay. Like, oh, okay, well that worked. I don't know, maybe put one of these in your closet, keep like your valuables and stuff like that. It's kind of heavy, so you can see it's rocking the camera, so it's kind of heavy. Come on. First of all, the mistake I'm making here, dropping it way too far. You only need to pick it up like 1.5 inches. And hey, look, that opens. So hey, awesome. So please remember, bolt down your safe. If you learn nothing else and you have one of these, please bolt down your safe. If you don't have holes to bolt it down, make holes and bolt them down. The best case scenario is, you know the flaws. The button, the openings, the access to that pin, bumping. When you go to buy a safe, look for these things. Ask this, if you're going to go, Lord knows, if you're going to go spend $1,000 on a safe, the vendor should be at least willing to let you take the back cover of the front door off and look so that you can see like how this thing's made and what kind of, it's amazing how some of these electronic safes, they will put these wonderful, powder-coated finishes and stainless steel and all this stuff that makes it look great. And when you take that front door off, man, it is like straight made in China, like this is $15. So, please take the time to do that, especially if you're going to put anything sensitive, documents, anything important in it, because, well, as you can see, it's not so good. So this is my shameless Locksport plug. We meet every month. This month is Wednesday, April 15th. We meet at the Columbus Idea Foundry. If you haven't been, it is wonderful. You can absolutely nerd out. You can bring your own beer if you're interested. If you haven't been to the Idea Foundry, I highly recommend it. But Locksport, don't be intimidated. We always have it's a mix of usually between 10 and 25 people, and it's usually half of us are very experienced and the other half of us have never done this before. Every class we teach a beginning how to pick locks, and we have interesting variation in topics. This month is banking bump keys and using pick guns, so I invite you to join myself and John Snyder out at Locksport, and maybe if he's around, Bill Senf might come too. So thank you for your time. I want to give credit to some very excellent physical security professionals such as Davey Nolan, Mark Weber Tobias, Bill Senf, John Snyder, and then a shout out to Brent Houston, Mick Douglas, and Kelly Allwood because, well, they're just cool. Thank you for coming to my wonderful safe talk, and I would love to answer any of your questions and help you with your safes. Please.
So what makes the safes that are over $1,000 different?
Okay, so not in all cases, they aren't always. Sometimes, but so what a lot of them will do in the more expensive safes is use a variation of that mechanism. So they'll either use something that you'll actually have to turn, and that solenoid only acts as a blocking mechanism, and they'll orient it in a much better position. Sometimes they'll actually use like a servo motor, which may or may not be better depending on how you look at it. But for the most part, they basically replaced that simple, $2 servo with something like a $20, a $20 servo over like a $2 solenoid, basically. Like it's not rocket science in most cases.
So are there any good safes out there?
There are lots of good safes, but not a lot of good safes under $1,000. I mean, that safe I just showed you, that Sentry safe, that fire safe, if it's bolted to the ground, and then one of the other things is like a ferromagnetic attack is very, Electromagnetic pen is very sensitive. Electromagnetism is very sensitive on the thickness of the metal. And what we're fortunate to in that case is it's a fire safe, so they've used drywall material basically, and then a thin piece of metal, so allowing the magnetic field to pass through it fairly easily. If they use, say, like a half-inch piece of steel, just like right over top of that, it would take an enormous magnet to hold that pin down. But in this case, like, you know, and in a lot of these cases, they use thin metal because it makes it cheaper, keeps costs down, and it allows you to do attacks like that. But that particular safe would be fine. They make that same safe, though, with a dial combination and a secondary key lock. I would recommend that over the electronic version, mainly because it takes more skill.
Better off buying the under $1,000 one and making the adjustments you suggest than to buy the over $1,000.
The question would, the only answer I would have to that is if you're like me and you're cheap, then yes. But by all means, if you have the means to buy a good safe, do so. But again, good. If you're going to spend $3,000, they should at least let you take a look at it. You know, open the thing up and take a look at it. Because, like I said, some of these, it's really, I mean, it's remarkable how beautiful they are on the outside. And they'll put a velvet lining on the inside. And when you take that front door off, it is rusted pot metal, disgusting. Yes?
Is there any like consumer reports of safes that actually look at the crackability of the safe? So you could say, you know, hey, at this price point, this one's less crackable than that one.
I think you are looking at the closest thing to it here. Yeah, there's not to my knowledge.
If you had something like that, you'd see some improvement.
I mean, there absolutely are. I mean, safes are rated. So this is kind of what I wanted to get into earlier about what are you asking of a safe, right? Like, what I ask of a safe is, you know, if you have an alarm, I expect the things that I put in the safe to not get taken in the amount of time it takes for the alarm to trigger and the police to respond, right? So obviously, most of these safes, if you take a 5-pound sledgehammer and beat on them for 5 minutes, it'll work. But my hope is that the alarm has been triggered and that by the time that the 5 minutes it takes you to pound it open, the police will be there or I will be there and you will have a bad day. Like, so my goal here is, you know, what are you asking of the safe? So in a lot of these cases, if you're storing a certificate root behind a $80 quarter-inch thing and it's sitting in a public area, I think you're asking, you know, you're going to get what you deserve in that case. But, you know, it's all what are you asking of it? Obviously, if you're putting something that is worth $1 million, maybe, you know, what you're allowed to buy with your payment card isn't enough for the safe that you're going to put this stuff in. All right. Any more? Oh.
Do you suppose that serial number that you got from the company is actually unique based on the serial of that safe, or did they just want you to prove that you owned the safe and it's the same little 5-pass code for everyone? So
yeah, the question was: is the safe is the serial number unique, or do they just want you to prove that? And it is unique because SentrySafe in particular uses they have a factory code that they assign to each safe, and they keep that code. They give it to you, and in a lot of cases, if you take the door off, they print it on a little barcode and stick it right there where you can see it. That's the actual factory code. So yes, if you have a SentrySafe, you could probably take a camera through one of those openings and just look, and right on the little, let's see if I can go back, whatever. But the right on that circuitry where the solenoid's at, they've printed the factory code in that case. So you could just view it, enter it, and you've now entered the safe. Again, so many problems.
For the attack on the serial number, do they have some registration process so they know, like, you have that, you know, it's registered to you and your address?
Yes, you can. You can, and that's what they would encourage you to, right, is to take the safe and then register it. But I also don't think that they're going to have a good mechanism to authenticate that you don't no longer own the safe, right? So you bought it and you, like, as long as somebody else is willing to vouch for, you know, as long as somebody has a stamp and is willing to send a fax, like, I don't think that there's a way that they're going to be able to authenticate you, you know, correctly. Unless, I mean, I doubt that they're going to put you in a situation where it's like, no, contact Carl and have him send you the, you know, like a copy of his driver's license or something. Because I wouldn't do that. Yeah.
You know, if SentrySafe has had
I am not aware of any such breach. The question was, has SentrySafe had any breaches that might have compromised the codes? I don't know. But yeah, exactly.
Liberty offered a digital lock. They've actually offered an upgrade for $200. Smith come out and put a dial on the
Yeah. In a lot of the cases, they are replaceable. I mean, the safes are interchangeable. I would say, in general, like if it's your safe, dial's probably the way to go. If you're the case where electronic locks make a lot of sense is when you have multiple people with access to the safe, right? Because you don't want to give the same code to like 5 different people. And I realize that there's dials you can do that. But for the most part, it's easy, right? You want to be able to just hit the button on the inside and then give you a code and you a code and you a code, and then we can all get into the safe. Well, that's kind of what causes this problem.
Vendors on any of these conditions ever like issued recall notices or anything like that, so you can like say, send in 3 little slams that goes over this and
Sure.
or anything. I mean,
If you contact SentrySafe, in that case, they will send you a flame. They will send you that little 2 screws.
like if you registered,
Mm-hmm.
do they send out a notice to people if there's a defect, or are they just?
I have not bought another one to find out, but I was told that they have changed the manufacturing process, which I have not seen a change in the manufacturing process, as you can see, and that that fix would be sent out to all the registered folks, but I'm not aware of that happening.
They should do that, or someone honestly might post a remark on Amazon that
I'm not trying to directly impact their business. I just want people to be aware of what they're buying.
You're talking about some of the electronic locks that allow you to assign different codes to different people.
Mm-hmm.
For those models, is there a logging mechanism built into the circuit board to use access to safe RAM?
Not on these. Now, maybe, you might find something. The electronics behind this are probably one of the only things that's variable, but for the most part, that solenoid and that mechanism, it's the same thing. Another attack I didn't even mention in here is if you have openings like that and say you can't get access to the pin, sometimes you can have access to that circuit board. Simply removing the wires from the circuit board or just peeling them back, you can apply current to that solenoid, still get it to go down. So either by attaching a 9-volt battery or something like that. So again, you have options. Are we okay on time? Oh, yep.
Okay, so on your Twitter feed, you've got quite a massive safe series. Yellow, blue, orange, fine.
Okay.
What's the story on that one?
So, oh, yes. This was, I think that was, is this the one where it's got the dial on it? The I-2000. So I didn't open that. That was a, Deviant Olm, he had this on his, I retweeted it, but it was a, basically he bought, they have automated mechanisms for brute forcing dial safes, and they sell these about $7,000 to $9,000 to buy one, but it bolts on the front of the safe and will basically iterate through every key combination, and depending on how many combinations you have, it takes between, 4 hours and 2 days, but it'll iterate through but it's like, when you watch that show Safecrackers, that's probably the best option, but you get you to buy another safe if I drill a hole in the front and hit the pin down, so. All right, any more questions? Yeah. All the warranties. All the warranties.
When they send you these parts, does that void your warranty?
No, not in the case of SentrySafe. They actually were very supportive of taking it apart and looking at it. It's just, I think it's like one of these situations where, they look at what they're competing against, and they have a fairly high-quality product compared to a lot of these, let's just call knockoff brand things. From a standpoint of look and feel, and from a marketing perspective, they're competitive. It's just, if there's a huge, I don't want to say it's a huge gap, but it's a major change on their part to start making things differently than the way they're doing. Again, I can't really speak for their strategy, but I see it. Like it's they sell a lot of safes. Any more questions? All right. Well, stop by and see me. I brought a safe. We can do it anyway.